Good afternoon. And good afternoon to everyone who is joining us on the internet. Right teaching and right learning. Well, we've talked before about the fact that all of you are always teaching. You might not think you are, but you are. A lot of the teaching you engage in is indirect, sneaky, in other words. You tend to set your limits with others with a tone of voice or a choice of words that say, you're overstepping your boundaries there, without saying, you're overstepping your boundaries there. You constantly teach each other how to behave with you. Again, for the most part, indirectly. We've been talking about the authority problem and the fact that it's just another version of the origin problem. That when you are denying the author of you, your father, and claiming a capacity to stand in your own right and see things in your own way as you choose, you take over authorship. You steal it away from God. Or at least you pretend to, and then you convince yourself that you're actually accomplishing it, and then you believe yourself. And now in this state of autonomy, you're put in a position, a required position, of being a teacher of your particular way of seeing things. Because you need others to agree with it if there's to be any sort of harmony. And so at the bottom line, when you have your back to the altar, and the Father is nowhere in your sight, you have to constantly be in a state of teaching and reteaching and reconfirming the teaching and influencing others in your experience. That's the state of being, you might say. The state of being of the human condition. Teaching becomes a means of control. And you all control each other into the best semblance of order you can achieve while all of you are still trying to be independent. When When Paul first reached out to me and we made the connection, I told him, not immediately, but within weeks, because he was in a financial problem, I said to him, your income comes from being centered. He had just finished a useless journey, as we talked last week, where he had attempted to express authority in a brand new way and develop a brand new idea that would control his world into a money-making, profitable, and successful business venture. Unfortunately, as with most good plans of mice and men, it failed, and he had, as we talked again about last week, his own crucifixion experience of total failure and being put in a position where he recognized that he had no personal power. And that's what it took in order for him to say help and reach out. Now, it's interesting because as a result of my saying to him, your income comes from being centered, which was another way of saying your fulfillment comes from turning back toward the altar. I just didn't use those terms. He ventured into a brand new way of being where he allowed fulfillment to unfold rather than manipulating it into his experience. And he found peace with that. So much so that it became utterly natural, and he didn't even think about it until one day, perhaps 7 years ago, someone visiting said, what's the biggest change that you've experienced having Raj in your life? And he hadn't thought about it. But at that moment when he thought about it, he realized the biggest change was that he was living without fear. Here he is, living without any control, living without exercising any control, making the gift of love that the two of us express together as a result of the joining. And so, however much or however little was in the bank account was not a trigger for emotion, because he learned that his income comes from being centered, being in his peace, joining with me, and being out from that experience. This, in spite of the fact that he still is reluctant to do it 100% of the time. Now, I'm mentioning this because we're talking about the fact that when learning occurs, change occurs. And when change occurs, you start being in the world in a new way. not according to the mutually agreed upon definitions that I have referred to as ego infrastructure. And when you do that, and you find the joy of it, and you find the peace of it, you will still find others in your experience who want to teach you, convince you that the well-established infrastructure is still valid and you need to pay attention to it. And so teaching goes on, in Paul's case, in interesting ways. Someone who requested materials, some of the Raj materials, and had not received them because there weren't funds to be able to supply them with. And Paul has learned that if there aren't, he doesn't try to do what is impossible and continues to make the gift until it is possible. This person called and suggested that perhaps orders, requests for materials should be filled for those who make contributions first. And then, if there are funds left, send them to those who don't make contributions. Of course, that is untenable, but it's an interesting way to try to reestablish the agreed upon definition, the financial and business infrastructure. Now, the time came when some of those requests could be filled. In fact, a large number of sets of tapes were sent. And almost immediately, there was a check in the mail. Not humongous, but substantial. Well, now, here's another example of teaching. I get, you get. The moment I get something from you, you'll get something from me. And it's a temptation. It says, here is the way the infrastructure works, at least with me, and it suggests that it will work that way for everyone else. And therefore, if there is a need for more, if it would be nice for there to be more inflow of funds so that more of the information that everyone wants could be sent out to them, all it requires is to get it out to them because they'll send it. They then will pay for it. But you know what? It completely sidetracks the fact that one's fulfillment comes from being centered and not from manipulation, even in the most indirect way, that a quick response will create a quick payment. You see? You see how indirect, but the teaching is there. Another suggestion is that those who make a gift by means of a credit card, who say, I would like to make a contribution monthly for until I say otherwise, that if their credit card expires and therefore the withdrawal ceases occurring, that there should be someone to call them up. And knowing that they want to make a contribution, bring to their attention that their card has expired and it has ceased. And again, we're in the realm of manipulation of income, in the guise of being friendly, in the guise of helping that individual succeed in doing what they want to do anyway. But when that happens, if that happened, the gift wouldn't come because there was an impulse in the giver to give, but because someone else had reminded them of their lapse of memory. It's very tempting, because all of you are familiar with the already established ego infrastructure, to slip back into it with a sort of spiritual slant to it, if you see what I mean. Which means that in actuality, you're abandoning spirituality, and you're just functioning in the mutually agreed upon definitions with a slightly new set of words to describe what you're doing. This is just an example of how you are all teaching in indirect ways, and even with the highest motives. The infrastructure that is firmly established says, you get this for that. Tit for tat. It's a barter, it's a bargain. It's not a gift. Love is a gift. And as you turn toward the altar, and as you open yourself up for learning, what's the fundamental lesson going to be? Love. It's going to be how to learn to embody love. And that is indeed going to require you to be from a new foundation. From your connection with your source, so that you are reflecting and glorifying God, embodying truth, embodying love, quote, in the world, unquote, meaning right where everyone else is still stuck in the rut, right where everyone else has a devotion to the very thing that they need to abandon, to let go of, and explore the possibility of living without. To explore the possibility of living without exercising authority. But rather yielding to God and His authorship of everything that identifies your fulfillment. Now, there's another way in which you teach each other, and that's your choice of words. You talk entirely differently with a new lover than you do with an old friend, and you convey different things with a new lover than you do with an old friend. Paul knows that his name is Paul, and he knew that when his mother said Paul, she was talking to him. But he also knew that when she said, Paul Norman Tuttle, oh, that meant something different. Different choice of words, a different way of saying it. Today, we're going to break the usual format of passing the microphone. I want you all to read along, but I'm going to read from the text as Bill Thetford typed it, before any editing was done to it. And I'm doing it for a reason. We're on the subject of right teaching and right learning. You will find, as I read today, that there are different words. And you will find that the difference is that the words in the first and second edition have been couched in, what shall I say? The high style of a significant document that fits in a library of significant documents that have withstood the test of time. And yet, you know what? It isn't the order of the words, and it isn't the preciseness of the words that makes the course of value. What makes the course of value is the fact that I was talking to someone. I was talking to Helen Schuckman. And I was talking to Bill Thetford. It was a communication, not a dictation of a script, not a dictation of a book to withstand the test of time. What makes the course of value is that it demonstrates that I am, and that I am in relationship to each of you, just as I was with Helen, and just as I was with Bill. And the value is in the relationship and not in the words or how they're couched. And so I want you to read along. I do not want you to become distracted by the differences you see. Just notice them, but pay attention to what I'm sharing. And pay attention to the fact that I was talking to two human beings who were willing to listen, thereby establishing our brotherhood now as a living thing, mine with them and mine with you. And that I won't talk to you, as you can tell right now, in a stilted fashion, but as a brother, talking to a brother or a sister, talking to another Christ who has forgotten that he or she is the Christ, reminding you of it, inspiring you to embrace it as a possibility and explore it, and to be with me as a brother on equal footing as you rediscover who you are. Right teaching and right learning. We have spoken of many different human symptoms. And at this level, meaning the human level, there is almost endless variation. There is, however, only one cause of all of them. The authority problem is the root of all evil. Money is but one of its many reflections, and is a reasonable representative example of the kind of thinking which stems from it. There we go with the existing ego infrastructures regarding business. Money is but one of its many reflections, the root of all evil, and is a reasonably representative example of the kind of thinking which stems from it. The idea of buying and selling implies precisely the kind of exchange that the soul cannot understand at all, because its supply is always abundant and all its demands are fully met. Every symptom which the ego has made involves a contradiction in terms. Be patient, we'll come to the part that's in the book. Every symptom which the ego has made involves a contradiction in terms. This is because the mind is split between the ego and the soul, so that whatever the ego makes is incomplete and contradictory. This untenable position is the result of the authority problem, which, because it accepts the one inconceivable thought as its premise, can only produce ideas which are inconceivable. The term profess is used quite frequently in the Bible. To profess is to identify with an idea and offer the idea to others to be their own. There you go, teaching. Influencing. And influencing for the purpose of affirming and establishing ego infrastructure. Detailed, complex little rules that govern how things work and what to do if they aren't working that way, and having 4 or 5 backup plans to replace the existing one under a variety of different circumstances, etc. And not only that, you have to teach all of this to someone else so that they know how to behave in order to be abiding by the agreed upon definitions and have some sort of harmony. So to profess is to identify with an idea, an infrastructure, and offer the idea to others to be their own. To be their own. Now, if that's not an imposition, I don't know what it is. And if that's not a practice of an exercise of control, I don't know what it is. The idea does not lessen, it becomes stronger. Now you'll find what's in the text. A good teacher, and I'm going to add this, humanly speaking, a good teacher clarifies his own ideas and strengthens them by teaching them. And when I say a good teacher, I mean it in the best of terms. A good teacher clarifies his own ideas and strengthens them by teaching them. Teacher and pupil are alike in the learning process.